welcome. Franz, why don't you help us get started? Why don't you introduce CBC to the audience?
Yeah, CBC is Canada's public broadcaster. So through a mix of public funding and advertising, commercial revenues, we deliver around 30 services in English and French through a range of television, radio, and more internet and web services, of course. So in brief, connecting Canadians from coast to coast is really at the core of our mandate. And we do this through the delivery of news and public affairs, sports like hockey and Olympics, as well as drama and youth programming. And we've gone Google with our 11,000 employees since March, by the way.
Yes. What's that mean, you've gone Google?
We've implemented Gmail for our 11,000 employees, first for mail and calendaring, but we are moving forward with exploiting all the new collaboration features that come with Google. And we are in the process of promoting them, and they are already very, very much used across the corporation, but we are further promoting those new functionalities.
Oh, Mike, Netflix is not only known for its disruptive technology, but also for its unique philosophy of hunting for talent and retaining employees to maintain your culture of innovation. How have you been able to do this successfully?
I think it's really a top-down approach. So if you look at our culture deck that Reed Hastings, our CEO, and Patty McCord, our former Chief Talent Officer, drafted probably 14 years ago, and set the tone and the context for the high-performance culture, and really operating it like a sports team, not a family, and phrases like an adequate performance gets a generous severance package. If you think about hiring 10x people and continuing to build upon that, working with smarter people makes you smarter and pushes you harder and keeps you out of your comfort zone. So I think a focus on pushing your own comfort zone every day is a key part of that. Just continuing on that virtuous cycle of the culture.
So culture is very important. Ben, how do you think Google's technology has influenced Google's culture and vice versa?
In all kinds of ways, actually. So I think in a modern corporation like Google, you really honestly can't separate culture and technology meaningfully. Technology is best when it is closely tied to, when it amplifies, accelerates, and creates culture. We make a pretty big investment. We have a number of unique cultural artifacts in Google, some of which you've read about, and those generally turn into opportunities for custom engineering for us, where technology gets to play a role. So, for example, many of you have read about the fact that Google has this unique approach to how we hire people, how we hire engineers, right? And similar approaches to how we promote and do compensation planning. And the technology is intimately tied into those. For example, because we believe that people should be hired by a committee of their potential peers to maintain standards, managers are too close to the matter to actually be the best judges of who should work for them or not. We did things like the technology for hiring implements anonymous voting for these committees, because we don't want to have the college classroom effect of the loudest speaker dominating the conversation, right? This is a case of the technology amplifying and accelerating the culture.
Anonymous voting, that's an interesting concept. Culture, in terms of the Tales from the Collaboration Crypt, collaboration projects often fail because of a cultural impedance mismatch. If you follow best practices of another company in your company, but the cultures are different, you're likely to fail, particularly when it comes to a collaboration-related initiative.
And collaboration is also an area where we've made a substantial investment, for example. And it is of course using Google Apps, which is one of the core ways in which we work together so quickly, and why I think Google, as a big company, is able to be as effective as a company, as fast-moving as a company, much smaller. But we've also made an enormous investment in building a custom video conferencing system that we had been users of an off-the-shelf video conferencing product, but we went and built our own, and we've deployed 7,000 plus units of it, because video conferencing is actually more important inside the company and the culture of the company than telephones. Telephones are optional. You have to ask for one to get one. Video conferencing is in every conference room.
talking about collaboration, I think both video conferencing and the Google Apps suite has been a huge quantum change for us. We also migrated back in March to Google Apps Enterprise, so Gmail, Calendar, Docs, all in on all of the suite. And I think the collaborative aspects of Docs and Sheets and presentations allows us to do things we were never able to do before. So for an example, we just had our quarterly earnings yesterday, and we all collaborate on the earnings draft in real time instead of having one editor sending it around via email, waiting for those edits. Then you lose track of who has the master copy.
Yeah.
So there's one master copy. We can lock it down and just iterate it on and just make it better.
For those of you who haven't moved to Google Apps, I mean, this is a surprising thing, but it is actually, I think, a key insight to the difference. Everyone can work together on a document at the same time. You're no longer kind of following the attachment from person to person. It really changes the way you work. You move much, much faster.
It's hard to go back and envision a time where we didn't do real-time collaboration.
Ben, you talked about using the doc collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
and Mike, how that has helped the productivity of the organization. What related changes in how you meet together have you implemented to make use of that technology? Right? Rather than, let's say, using the email Outlook, and you're working on attachments, right? There must have been some other how you structure your meetings and organize effectively.
Yeah, so I can address that. So we just had our quarterly business review, and it used to be all presentation based. We've now went to pre-read memo format. So every group, so product engineering, marketing, all do a memo. We all read it beforehand, so you get the context. They do a brief presentation and then much more interactive Q&A. So it's a shift from just consumption of presentations and death by PowerPoint to reading, getting deeper context about the material, and then being able to engage with that. And then I take the same approach with my staff meetings. So we have a weekly, my directors and the managers, I put a memo together, we collaborate on that, have an agenda. They can ask questions, comment on things I put in there, and then we have a much deeper discussion versus just going through a bulleted list that was in my mind ad hoc.
Within Google, there are many models for this, but one thing that's very common is, first of all, virtually every meeting is a video conference, and hopefully I'll get a chance to talk more about the way that's worked. And it's based on this technology that we built ourselves, which uses the same backends as Hangouts, right? So anyone can participate from their laptop. But one of the features of this video conferencing is, like in a Hangout, you can have your laptop, the screen with the window with a document in it, whether that's a slide deck or a memo or a document that's taking notes, is in the presentation as well, right? So what's really, really common is you may have a note taker bring their notes as they're taking them into the presentation, and it doesn't go up on the big screen, but you see a little window showing the notes as they're being created, right? And you can flip back and forth because each person can control what they see at their own endpoint, or each room can. In the case of a room, you see people flip back and forth between a slide and the person speaking, right? And you can move back and forth between the slide, the person speaking, the notes that are being taken, and so on. And that's kind of the backbone of how we do meetings, actually.
We have noticed also that people explore all those tools now that the platform is in place, and it has an impact on others. So for example, with Google Hangout and Drive and Chat, we produce shows from multiple locations live, where hosts and technicians can communicate with each other, like if they were in the studio together. So that's pretty cool. And this is being communicated, and people try to do this in their own work. So it's kind of in French we would say boule de neige. It has an impact on others. So that's amazing.
So in technical companies, you move from one religion to the other religion. There are always people saying, "Hey, I like Skype better. I use Skype at home. Why do you force me to go to Google?" Anytime on IT conferences, this is a standard. There's always people who come back and say this is better. You're killing innovation by not letting them go to box. So you have those kind of issues. Do people come back and say, "I prefer that better," or it works?
So once again, I think it's a slow shift. It's IT should never say no, you can't use something.
Would you mind repeating the question so everybody can
Sorry. So I think the essence of the question was, say you have a bunch of users using Skype or an equivalent technology, and how do you, as an IT department, say you cannot use that technology and make them adopt Google Hangouts? So I think there's ways to tie those together, and then you slowly show people the benefit of using the common platform. So for us, we use Blue Jeans Networks to tie together several video clients as we move fully to Google Hangouts and GVC.
Yeah, I mean, the philosophy that exists below almost everything that my organization does starts with, empowerment, trust, transparency, right? So, the first reaction I have is someone says, well, I really want to use Skype. My first reaction is, or whatever the case may be, my first reaction is, well, let's see what we can do to make you effective. If that's really what you need to use, let's figure out what we can do to do that. Now, there are cases where you have to make sure that you're not compromising the security or integrity of your company or its operations, and kind of those mandates come first, and people actually understand. People don't have a problem with that if it turns out that a provider has a security answer that you're not comfortable with, or alternatively, they like it when a provider has a security answer that they are comfortable with. But I think you definitely position your organization as being trying to help and empower people and help them make the right choices. And in terms of the choices that your organization is trying to make for the larger company, I think that the goal is it should win by seduction, not if you have to say, damn it, this is a standard we chose for you, right? I think that's patriarchal in a bad way.
And that'll also just make shadow IT more prevalent, because you'll continue to use Skype. There's no way we can stop that. So it's what features of Skype or equivalent program do you like, and then how can we get there and partner with Google or whomever to provide those features.
For us, we have given up on those controls, except if it has impact on licenses or on security. As you mentioned, we really focus on promotion of what we think are the best tools to use for our users, but we will not prevent them from using other tools necessarily. And by doing so, we have observed that our employees themselves, they find new tools that we have not thought about. So it's very powerful to have taken this approach, because they find new tools, and at the end of the day, those tools make the difference in our company. So
how do you collaborate with people who aren't on the Google platform? Because outside companies, partners, and so on.
I missed the question.
How do you collaborate with people who aren't on the Google platform? Outsiders, for example, partners, suppliers, distributors.
We asked them to migrate to Google first. No, just kidding. I think Google just rolled out a feature where you can actually share a document with those who don't have a Google or Gmail account.
And there's also, you can export and import documents to PDF or to other formats and share in that way, and you can go old school with attachments, copying them out if you really need to. And to be honest, there are some cases where legacy formats are still the right thing to do. I mean, to be really frank, right? When lawyers or people are working on contracts, right, the Microsoft Word-based redlining workflow, to date there's no substitute for it, and there's an awful lot of lawyers and contract negotiators out there, in the non-Google Apps world who are still using those tools today. I'm not going to take Word away from our lawyers. They need to use those redlining features and attachments, because that's the way most of the lawyer world works.
So some of the lawyer world is, in fact, still with WordPerfect.
So that feature you just referenced, that you can collaborate with non-Google people. Can you just give me, are there any features that you lose, in that regard, or is it the same as collaborating with people on Gmail?
To be honest, I haven't tried it.
It's brand new. My team is still looking at it. It's brand new, and we're just asking, we could give you a follow-up now, but they're looking at it this week to try to figure out where and how it's applicable. But in the end, that feature is going to be hugely powerful and important to us. Our questions are all around: do we have the understanding of how stuff is being shared, and what controls do we have of around how things get shared to people who don't have user IDs, right?
So Ben, you've been a CIO in non-Google space and now in a Google space. Could you talk a little bit about the differences that you see and what caused those differences between the two?
Right, yeah, so I touched upon this a little bit earlier, but these two core elements of our pardon the grandiosity, the social contract that we have as IT with our users. Number one is empowerment, right? Not be mommy and daddy and tell you what to do and how to do it, but to try to help you help understand and deliver the tools that can make you, our users, be most effective. Secondly, this notion of trust and transparency, right? That we'll trust you to work in the manner that you think is best, and to make good decisions on behalf of the company based on what you need, what your needs are within the context of the company, and we'll be transparent about the costs and the impact of that. So for example, you can walk up, we have these things called tech stops where you get walk-up tech support. They have shelves of free peripherals, right? Free to you, the Google user, right? Mice, keyboards, power adapters, USB hubs, some stuff that's even hundreds of dollars, right? And if you need that stuff to do your work, you just go tap your badge to a reader there and take what you want. There's no approval required. We trust if you made that decision, you needed it, right? But then we deeply believe in what the industry now calls showback, right? So we show you every month a total cost of your, first of all, on the bin that you got that unit from, we'll tell you what the cost to Google was. Oh, that was a $200 KVM switch, or that was a $30 to $5 mouse, or whatever. So you can make a smart decision. Do I really need this much, right? And then we show you the total cost of your IT every month in a bill. We'll show you, do you have a company-provided mobile phone? What are we paying for that? What are we paying for your mobile phone line? If you're one of the few people who has a landline, what are we paying for that? What did your personal computer, if you have installed software, what does that cost? How much storage are you using? And in every one of those cases, there's a button saying, I want to give this back. Like, I don't need this anymore, right? Which will do the right thing. It'll uninstall the software from your computer. It'll drop a ticket for someone to come and pick up that device that you're not using anymore. We make it really, really easy for you to do the right thing. We trust you will do the right thing if you have all the information we have.
How many people are doing something similar in terms of showing costs to the users at that broader level? I mean, that's pretty novel.
We're getting there.
You're doing that?
We've just started, but that's where we want to go. Exactly where.
Yeah, and we take the same approach with our expenses. So, the typical expense approval process is you submit your expenses, it goes to your manager, they click approval or approve without reviewing it. So it's pointless. The money's already been spent. So we do auto approval. You get a roll-up report at the end of the month of what your employees spend. If they choose not to do the right thing, then you take action. Otherwise, it's just informative. But there's still the audit log for the SOX team.
Yeah, and we do pretty broad sharing of T&E expenses as well. How much do my peers travel, and what does that cost, right? So I think it's a game changer. I mean, you asked about comparing my prior experience to this. When you need to ask approval for everything, you start thinking about, I'm being treated like a child, I want to figure out how to game this system, right? Like, I'm not being treated as an adult, it pisses me off. Let me figure out what the most I can get is. It's a natural reaction to having even the most reasonable things require an unreasonable act. The minute you tell people, we're going to treat you as a reasonable human being, you get reasonable behavior.
Other questions? Let's shift.
So, so Ben, back to your thing. So did you totally eliminate the approval process then for all the technology?
There are. If you want a computer outside of the normal refresh cycle, for example, and we have pretty generous refresh cycles, that requires a simple approval. If you want, there's a threshold of expenses.
Like software purchases, or is that totally open too? Is it like within certain bounds?
So it's very, very easy to request certain kinds of, like software that my team has negotiated for, like where we have big licenses, the usual players, where we have enterprise class licenses. It's very easy to request getting that software, right? And maybe you need a manager to literally reply yes in an email, but that's it. Honestly, like if we haven't negotiated a software license, for example, in the case I think you were asking about software, if we haven't negotiated, we just tell you to go and buy it yourself. Like, what value are we going to add? We're going to slow you down. We're going to add cost to the system, right? So we tell you to go out and do it yourself, and we people make it easy to do that. They can expense the software. It's easy to cut a PO if you want. You can cut a PO for it.
So let's shift just a little bit away from software and more to physical workspaces and the impact on the organization. So one factoid that I typically share with folks is Eli Lilly found that by redesigning the physical space in a couple of their office buildings, they were able to significantly improve employee engagement, improve communication, reduce the volume of email, make more effective meetings. And so the physical workspace, and that's just one example, has an impact on how people work and how effective they are in doing it. Any experience at Google around that?
So this is a topic of very current interest and focus on the part of my team. So, first an observation. Teams at Google collaborate. We started off with the observation a little while ago that, the workplace has changed, Google's workplace in particular. When we say it's a global workforce, we literally mean it. Buildings don't house people who all work together in that building. Yes, generally the people in a building may work together with each other, but they are going to regularly work with people all over the world. And the building is not a shell for people collaborating within the building, but the building needs to be a facility that allows global teams to work together, right? So you immediately need to think about design differently. So for example, most conference rooms that I see, even if they're kitted out with video conferencing, essentially it's a long table, right? The design of most modern conference rooms it was designed for people in the room with this bizarre add-on appendix for people who aren't in the room, right? And when you think about it, at Google, that's ridiculous because every meeting is a video conference meeting. On a typical day in September, we did 25,000 video conferences in one day from 80,000 endpoints, right? So every meeting is a video conference meeting. The idea that remote participants are, this appendage you stick onto the side is crazy, and that buildings need to be designed to facilitate global collaboration across buildings, across geographies. This is actually a huge topic of active R&D for us because we're building a lot. There's an enormous amount of, if you've driven by the Google campus in Mountain View, there's an enormous amount of construction going on. We're building another enormous campus in London right now by King's Cross Station, I think is where it's going. And in New York, where I'm based, we're building out a city block-sized floor every year for the next 4 years, right? So these are all places where we need to get this mode of collaboration right. So we're working with people on Astro's team and people in Google Research, with a team at Georgia Tech and with IDEO, the design shop, on designing the facilities and the technology together from the beginning to facilitate this new way of working.
And for us, on a much smaller scale, we're also building a new campus and putting a tremendous amount of thought into how we do the new office space. And the conference room comment resonates because we're trying a new thing for exec staff meetings where we build what kind of looks like a Star Trek-like Coliseum. So it's 3 rings going up, and you have 3 levels, and then we'll put swivel chairs in. Instead of everybody sitting around a table facing each other, you can now have a circle, and we've done some things with acoustics, so you don't have to scream, people can hear you, you talk in a normal voice, and it just makes people more comfortable and more engaged in the conversation. And then as far as office space in general goes, so my philosophy is I don't have an office. I float around. I'm either in meetings all day or want to be out amongst different employees so I can get feedback and be really an engaged IT leader versus sitting in an office saying no.
Besides living where you do and working where you do, you don't have to worry about heavy winter coats and so forth. So you don't need to hang your coat somewhere.
That's right. Definitely helps.
Well, at CBC, we're not an example to follow as far as physical space. We still have our old and standard buildings, but we are undertaking 2 pilots, one in real estate and another one in the media environment, to really test those things. No office. We visited the BBC a couple of 6 months ago, and they have implemented this concept of open office. I think the president of BBC does not have an office, a closed office. So anyway, that's more to come on that for us, but so far we're not inspiring.
So one of the other critical factors as you plan out collaboration and effective working and so forth is thinking about the nature of the workforce itself and the shift in the demographics. Any sense of how far out you plan for that? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of the impact of millennials on your workforce, changing composition of employees versus contingent workers? What are you seeing?
For us, it's a priority to hire more millennials. First, these people are digital native. So we think that definitely they will help us shaping a better collaboration environment and social environment. So those folks are important to us in that context. And they are also important in the context of defining what content we should produce, how we should distribute it in the ways it's relevant for our audiences, which are becoming more and more young millennials. So.
Mike? Oh.
If I may.
Go ahead.
So I think I'd love to take advantage of the leaders who are on the stage now. I'd like to hear their thoughts on specifically how do you define leadership in the context of your role as a CIO, CTO? We're talking, we've heard you express a lot of the concepts that you're using to change things, but how do you actually define your role as leadership? What does that mean to the organization with these things you're trying to achieve? And the second part would be, what would you regard as the Achilles heel in that capacity?
I can start. For us, it's the role of IT is really more to empower our workers with easy to use and powerful tools. So we think that if we can place in the hands of a growing number of employees all those modern tools and the tools they want to use, it's going to be definitely a 10x amplifier in terms of growing our business. So this is how we see the role of IT, but also to use technology to do things better is also very important, to canalize the huge creative workforce that we already have in place. It's already in place. So it's a question of streamlining our processes, finding new ways of doing things. So that's...
Your Achilles heel in that effort?
Your what? My what?
Achilles heel, what is the thing?
Yeah.
What's the obstacle that seems to plague you?
Obstacles. CBC is a big company, 2 networks, English, French, several corporate components, finance. So I think it's to have them together so that we go, we are taking the same direction. So that's a big challenge for us. And also finance, the investments, finding the money, the investments to do our project is also a challenge. The process is heavy. We need to proceed with business cases. We need to find ROI. And sometimes there's no financial ROI, but there's so much potential. But we need to, to find financial incentives and so on. So these are my 2 challenges, I would say.
So for me, I think I view my role at Netflix as being out in front of all parts of technology, networking, security, applications. And so living outside of my own comfort zone sets a really good context for the team and then the company in general, I hope. So it's just spending an inordinate amount of time doing research as well as leading then by contextual example. And then the main Achilles heel is probably the laws of physics. So I'm only able to ingest so much information at once and disseminate that or set context with various groups and be in multiple locations at once. But I'm hoping GBC can help me do that.
Yeah, we're going to try to make you successful there. So I think for me, an awful large chunk of the leadership challenge comes from the fact that I think one of the primary things that makes my job great is that Larry Page doesn't hold a separate standard for IT versus any other function at Google. Right? When I go and talk to Larry about what we're doing with video conferencing or hiring systems or whatever the case may be, or how we're using the technologies that Google's produced in its knowledge and search areas inside the company. He sets exactly the same standards for what we do, for what my team does, as what he expects the team that works on search or maps or ads or any of these other, or enterprise, any of the other products to do. And so one of my jobs as a leader, is to, it's awesome, but it means that my people have to be, you can't have a comfort zone, right? And it means that you really, really need to be thinking about what the next big things are, and you need to think about advancing the state of the art in Google, right? I really try to drive conversations around what should enterprise technology look like? How do we make that look at Google? How does Google then learn from that? And how does that influence what we do as an enterprise technology provider, right? That, for me, leadership is about trying to create that cycle. And as you all know, there are tons of forces in our organizations that make that hard, right? Everyone gets set in a way of working and a set of deliverables and a set of things that they do, and Astra called the kind of the keeping the trains running bit of our job. And so part of my job is to get people out of their comfort zone, to remind my people, if we're not making 12 disruptive changes to the technology environment at Google a year minimally, we're failing, right? Because you can't have great technology. By definition, you can't have great technology if you're doing the same things you were doing 4 years ago. Technology moves too fast. And the Achilles heel is, of course, the fact that Google is 50,000 or so employees. I don't know the exact number, but they have a limited appetite for change, right? And their appetite for change is greater than it is in many companies, and part of my group's goal is to enhance their appetite for change. But we have to figure out what the right appetite is and make sure that we don't dramatically exceed it. Both it burns out my people and it generates villagers with pitchforks and torches.
I'd like to add one more challenge. Changing the culture of my IT team is a big challenge in my leadership role. To go from controls to promotion, for example. So that's many people are still they still like managing infrastructure, patching systems. They are far from the moonshot discussion that we had earlier this morning. So this is really a challenge to bring this team, to the next level.
And I think that goes back to how we started this conversation about talent and recruiting and culture. So a lot of people think about maintaining the culture, and I think every new hire, you need to think about raising the bar of the culture and the talent, which pushes people out of their comfort zone and forces the IT people to think differently and adopt things like cloud computing.
Absolutely. The implementation of our Google has been very helpful in that context, to help our IT team to understand, cloud systems are still interesting to manage and are powerful to our users, and so they've been rewarded for that. So that's.
So what's your next big project that you're contemplating now? What's the biggest change that you're trying to potentially put in place next year?
For me, I would say make all our content. We have a lot of pieces of content, archived content, and so on. More available, more searchable, more identifiable, and not only to all CBC employees, but to all Canadians and partners, and potentially moving that content to the cloud. Because by doing so, it will really facilitate the access of it from everybody. So that's really our big next thing for next year. I would like to add also, we deliver more and more web services, digital services. So BI and big data is going to play a key role for us in terms of enabling the creation of a better relationship with our audience. So.
Mike.
So there's a few of them. One of the first ones is what we're calling a zero trust network architecture, which we're collaborating with Ben and the Google team on. So thinking about the campus network as having no perimeter firewall, so the perimeter is now identity and application and data access, and that you should be able to access those the same way you do at your home or a coffee shop or here. And hand in hand with that goes more behind the scenes security inspection. So not blocking, but really deep inspection to make sure that you don't have advanced persistent threats and malware. And so one of the other things we were talking about last night is, a year ago I said we should kill antivirus. because it's a deprecated technology you're always chasing. So we're looking at new ways to innovate, and that goes hand in hand with the entire network architecture piece.
How many of you feel real comfortable with what Mike just said for yourselves? That means
It's good. I've
there's a
made some
lot.
people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it's good if it makes you feel uncomfortable, because then you've got to go ahead and explore it and understand it.
How about the flip side of it, which is that we would love to be able to get comfortable with it. So let's see if there's technology and actions that help make it a reality and not an experiment. Because if it's a reality, it would solve a lot of problems for a lot of people.
I would say it's rapidly becoming a reality. There's several platforms out there now.
Yeah, I mean, we've removed most antivirus from our desktops and laptop computers, right? We do on Windows, we do aggressive things like we do application whitelisting, right? On Windows computers, you can only run DLLs and executables that have a signature we recognize, right? And that is a far more secure, it's difficult to get there, and it causes a fair amount of work, but it's a far more secure position to be in.
What's your next big thing?
So I wanted to amplify Mike's point about zero trust. And when Mike and I first met, it turned out we had parallel projects to do the same thing, right? But it's in retrospect, it seems obvious, right? Most of the personal computers at Google are laptops. This idea of a perimeter is ridiculous, right? That laptop connected to a corporate network goes and connects to a home internet connection, an airport, a hotel, a coffee shop every day, right? And so this idea that you have this perimeter around which you've protected your company is silly. Instead, the thing to do is be very, very sure about the contents of the computer, the people using it, make sure you understand how it gets there, right? And treat every user as if they were coming to you via the internet, because effectively they are. And the minute you do that, remote access becomes a non-problem, for example, and you have a much more secure position to be in.
And then thinking things about geolocation and anomaly detection around logins from different geo-IP or geolocations.
Exactly. The other project that we're working on that I'm pretty excited about is we've started looking at advancing the notion of enterprise search to marry what the Google search appliance does, indexing the corpora that exist within your enterprise, with using the technologies that Google has built to index the content that your enterprise creates and uses that exist in the cloud, and then marrying those results in one set of search results. And it's allowed us to harvest an enormous number of innovations that you've seen Google deploy to google.com search. And I say I don't know if Astor will call this a moonshot, but I call it a moonshot, is that we think that we can make enterprise search be better, have better search, better results, be more meaningful to the end user than internet search, right? I mean, today it's just the opposite, right? You expect a google.com search for something you're searching on the internet to be better than whatever you do to search inside your company. We think we can flip that because we actually know so much more about you. We can build a knowledge graph that's based on the data within your enterprise. We can generate personas based upon the work in your company. Like, this is still very, very early stages, but I'm really excited about that.
So you're hinting, I know we're out of time. I'd love to dive deeper into this. This is the emergence of enterprise smart machines. I love the concept. I want to thank the panel. I want to thank the audience. This has been a very good session. I think we've put a few ideas out there that shake up some conventional wisdom and get people thinking about new ways of dealing with things. So thank you, everybody. And we're off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.